The Harbinger, 2022. Building manager Jason enters his resident Mavis's flat after hearing her sobbing yet again. When Jason awakens Mavis from a long sleepwalking trance, he discovers that she had scratched her arms with blood in an unsuccessful attempt to wake up. Jason advises Mavis to get in touch with a helpful person after observing her messy state. Monique Cartwright, whose suicide Mavis helped avert when they were younger, is invited to temporarily stay with Mavis by her estranged friend. Although her father Ronald and brother Lyle, who are currently residing with her in a stay-at-home isolation during the COVID-19 epidemic, have raised worries, Monique escapes quarantine to see Mavis. Monique's parents called her Sparrow and she leaves behind a drawing of a sparrow. Monique briefly runs with Mavis's irate neighbor Crystal on the way up to her flat. The two of them argue about quarantine procedures. Additionally, Monique finds out that Edward, a young kid who is ill, lives above Mavis. Mavis tells Monique that she has had recurring nightmares and has been finding it more challenging to wake up from them after their reunion. Mavis explains that the nightmares are caused by a haunting creature that just threatened to murder her, which would erase memory of her from the outside world. Monique offers to join Mavis in bed. Monique has nightmares about her late mother. The nightmare that follows that dream features Edward breaking through Mavis' roof. In the entryway, Monique then notices a hooded plague doctor. The mysterious individual is pleased to meet Monique, Edward informs her. Monique awakens abruptly. Monique acknowledges having a disturbing dream but dismisses it as a result of what Mavis told her after awakening Mavis from another trance that left her bleeding. However, supposing what Mavis said to be real, Monique shares her claims online in an effort to connect with others who could be going through the same thing. Monique draws the image of the plague doctor that both women saw in their dreams with the help of Mavis's description. Jason slips a letter under the door telling renters that a resident tested positive for COVID-19, and Monique learns she is stuck at Mavis's flat. When everyone finds out that Edward abruptly passed away, the situation becomes more emotional. Another set of dreams that Monique has also feature Edward and a man without a nose. Mavis is in the midst of another trance when Monique awakens. When Mavis finally awakens, Monique acknowledges that they are both going through the same thing. Monique and Mavis set up a video conversation through their online post with a demoniac named Wendy, who expresses great concern when Monique shows her the sketch of the plague doctor. Harbinger is the name Wendy gives to the figure. She forewarns that it proliferates through the psychological sowing of fear by ingraining ideas of its ethereal presence in people's brains. In order to stop further victims from learning about Harbinger, Wendy instructs the women to erase their post and burn the sketch before resuming the call. Wendy affirms that Harbinger has the power to change reality and pretend that some people never existed. Small artifacts or souvenirs, however, are occasionally left behind from before that person's existence was forgotten. Wendy remembers talking to people like Monique and Mavis in the past, but she can't place them now. Wendy also asserts that Harbinger cannot be stopped in any known means. Mavis becomes irate, and she quickly ends the call. Mavis finds it difficult to recall how Harbinger first introduced himself to her. Mavis believes he may have been someone she was in love with before he disappeared when she shows Monique a single image of a man she doesn't recognize. In a nightmare, Ronald and Lyle, Monique's parents, chastise her for violating quarantine rules. Monique is taken to a funeral house by Harbinger during yet another encounter. Edward informs Monique in the morgue that Wendy was mistaken because there is a way to defeat Harbinger. Monique responds with a nod when Edward asks whether she knows what to do. Monique is then asked to show Edward her bedroom. Then Edward and Monique appear over Mavis's bed, where they watch helplessly as Harbinger drags Mavis away while she is screaming, erasing Mavis from reality. In a nightmare, Ronald and Lyle, Monique's parents, chastise her for violating quarantine rules. Monique awakens in an empty apartment after another encounter. Jason informs Monique that she is intruding. Monique phones Lyle, who had been concerned about his sister after she went missing for several days without a trace, but has no recollection of what happened or how she got there. Harbinger is a dream that Monique had in the Cartwright residence. Monique begs to be spared because her family depends on her, but Harbinger is adamant about deleting her just like she did when she attempted suicide. Monique retaliates by sawing off the head of Harbinger. Edward approaches the door in the dream. Monique receives praise from Edward for murdering Harbinger. Monique gives Edward credit for his assistance. Edward leads Monique to a bed outside in the snow after inquiring whether she's prepared to get up. When Monique wakes up at home, she realizes she has been dozing off for 3 days. Monique phones Wendy to inform her that the encounter is over. Monique looks at a picture of her with Mavis, who she can't remember, and wonders how she even learned about Harbinger. Wendy advises Monique to keep that artifact. Wendy seems disoriented, Monique notices. Wendy questions Monique about how she was able to stop Harbinger. Wendy learns about Edward via Monique. Wendy warns that the Harbinger in her dreams is everyone, but Monique insists that Edward was an angel. When Wendy's warnings grow too persistent, Monique cuts the phone off. Monique is being dragged out of the room by Harbinger when he unexpectedly enters. Lyle is jolted out of his reverie by a visiting neighbor who has come to the house to look into the disturbance. Lyle claims he doesn't have a sister and lives there by himself with his father, who is presently in the hospital. Ronald leaves the hospital and goes home. Ronald foresees a greater gloom as he and Lyle talk about the troubling pandemic. Ronald is confused when he discovers Monique's sparrow drawing on the floor as he makes his way upstairs to take a nap.